Hello everyone, I'm Glorv, but you can call me Carly, and welcome to Read Receipts. In today's episode, we are traversing new waters, or should I say spores, by talking about the standalone fantasy Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. We're gonna get into talking about what this book is about, and this is just kind of a spoiler-free quick review. This book was so good. This is gonna be such a fun book to talk about here. So, in case you have not yet read Tress of the Emerald Sea, I have the back of the book summary pulled. I'm going to read that for you guys, and then if you are interested, pause the episode here, read the book, come back, and we will talk more about it. So, in case you don't know, here is what the book is about. The only life Tress has known on her island home in an emerald green ocean has been a simple one, with the simple pleasures of collecting cups brought by sailors from faraway lands and listening to stories told by her friend Charlie. But when his father takes him on a voyage to find a bride and disaster strikes, Tress must stow away on a ship and seek the sorceress of the deadly midnight sea. Amid the spore oceans where pirates abound, can Tress leave her simple life behind and make her own place sailing a sea where a single drop of water can mean instant death? It's a pretty short summary. It's so funny because it's like just reading that, you're kind of like, huh? I feel like, but you just have to trust me. You just have to read it, okay? So once you read it, come back here and we'll talk more about it. Now, for the rest of us who have already read this book, just to give my general feelings out about this book, I really loved it. It really was so good in so many ways. So to back up, I have never read a Brandon Sanderson book, and that is for some intentional reasons and some unintentional reasons. Some of it is just, I still am making my way through a bunch of other things. And I definitely have in my mind that I hope to get to Brandon Sanderson more, but I will admit that part of it also is that I am pretty intimidated to read any of his stuff. For instance, so when we were looking at the year, me and Sam actually picked this book out because we wanted to do Brandon Sanderson, and we looked at Mistborn, and even just reading the back of the book summary for Mistborn, I was like, like, the sentences were so long, they made no sense to me. I was just like, I don't even feel good about reading this back of the book summary, let alone reading an entire novel like this. So then when we read the back of the book summary for Tress of the Emerald Sea, I was like, okay, this feels a lot more approachable. For one, I can understand the back of the book summary. I understand those words. I can get through a sentence of it and feel like, okay, I understood that sentence. It felt like a good in-between of like, well, this is Brandon Sanderson, but it is not quite as scary to me as Mistborn. And also, it had looked, based on what I could tell online, that it was a standalone. So I was like, this is kind of win-win-win across the board. So that's why we picked it. And I have to say, this was so not what I was expecting. Now, obviously, I read I don't remember exactly what they were called, the prologue, epilogue, all those sort of things, or like author's notes, whatever, that were included in the book. And it makes a lot of sense that this was a passion project. It was written for his wife. It was intended to be kind of Princess Bride-esque, but still, even reading all that stuff going into it, I was so taken aback by how delightful of a read it was. Everything about it was just such a good time. It was so humorous. I genuinely was laughing as I was reading. It was so just sweet and fun and kind of carefree. There were stakes at times, but for the most part, it was very lighthearted, and it was just so much fun to read, and it was so not what I was expecting. When I think of Brandon Sanderson normally, I do think kind of high intensity and difficult and blah, blah. And so reading the first chapters, I was like, this is the man? Is this? And then at first I was like, is this how he writes all his books? And then kind of hearkening back to the whole it's intended to kind of seem like Princess Bride-esque. It's like, okay, no, this is I think more specific to this book / Hoyd as a character. I'd be very interested to see how Hoyd as a storyteller evolves in, because I know that even though Tress is like kind of standalone, there are like other Hoyd stories where he is the storyteller. It'll be interesting to see how like his tone sort of transforms over time, because I get the sense, I don't remember now what I read from that gave me this sense, but it seems as though as these Hoyd stories come out, his tone is going to change a little bit. And like this is probably as playful as it gets, and it's going to get a little bit more serious going forward. So that in itself is a very interesting transformation. Even though there are technically stakes, like we have deadly pirates, we have deadly spores, even though it has all those things, nothing felt that intense, which in my opinion is kind of a plus, that it's like you can't say there weren't deadly stakes, but it still didn't feel too serious of a book, which I don't think this book could have been serious if it tried because of Hoyd and how Hoyd is, but still. Another thing about this book that really took me by surprise was just the uniqueness of it. It's so funny because in some ways it feels like this book is so like back to basics in like it is a fantasy book, but like it's pirates and yada yada yada, like kind of prince and princess type vibes, damsel dame in distress type stuff, but also the world building is so unique. I've never once considered in my life an ocean not made of water. And not only that, an ocean made of a substance that if it touches water, it will likely kill you. Like, that's crazy. Who thinks of shit like that? And on top of all of that stuff, there's a genuinely like sweet kind of fairy tale-esque romance at the heart of it. And also a lot of good reflective moments. And I think that one of the fun things about the way that this book was written, because it is written from Hoyd's POV, he has this ability to really speak frankly to the audience and break the fourth wall, which allows him to more easily kind of reflect and comment on various themes or even just general like commentary on the world type stuff, which was a lot of fun. And I thought that there were a lot of really good and interesting, sweet little insightful nuggets of things about like being true to yourself and like how we treat other people and just kind of crazy philosophical stuff dropped in a quick little paragraph, and then like we keep moving with the story. So it was just, I gave this book 5 stars. Wait, did I? No, I think I gave it 4.5, which is a little crazy. I'm now looking back and I'm like, why did I do that? I don't think there's any reason not to give it 5 stars. I might go back and fix that. It was a great time. I've talked enough about it in a general sense. So let's get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of this book here. So I have so many notes because I think the number one thing that I think about when I think about this book is that obviously the romance is, it's funny because the romance is, when you are thinking about it initially, it's like, well, it was kind of a small part in a way, but I do want to say that even from the get-go, I thought the romance was really sweet and I actually was very hooked on it quickly, which was really impressive. But also, knowing how the book ends, guys, I was combing through everything, knowing that, like, in the end, Charlie is with us the whole time. Huck, our friend Huck, is Charlie. I had to go through and, like, try and find any sort of Easter egg clue type stuff. And it's also kind of funny. I, at some point, made a dedicated section called "Here is the part where I talk through moments that looking back are kind of romantic, but initially didn't seem that way because I thought Huck was just a rat." And I did write down some, but I'll be honest, there were actually not that many, which in some ways is good because it's like, that would be crazy if this whole time we were supposed to see romantic feelings between Tress and a rat. But I still took note of those. There's so much that I want to say about the romance that I almost feel like I need to get through all my other thoughts before I exactly get into romance specific thoughts. So we're going to kind of go down through my thoughts in book order, and then we will go back and talk a little bit more about the romance, okay? First of all, I thought it was really funny that when this story is kind of introduced to us and we're just going through talking about Tress the whole time, right? Like our girl Tress, which by the way, Love her. Tress is adorable and incredible, and I love the arc that she goes through on this story. But I think it's so funny that, like, there's a certain point where all of a sudden Hoyt is like, that's me, by the way. And it's like, oh, I wasn't thinking about that someone was specifically telling this story. I knew that I saw on Goodreads that, like, in the top descriptor, it says Hoyd's travails. So I knew that it took place of someone's POV, but, like, it really did not occur to me. There might have even been signs. I basically reread / come through this book for a second time, and even the second time around, I didn't specifically see anything until the line where he's like, that's me, by the way. That was like, oh, right. Someone specifically is telling the story, and it's not just like a general third person, second person, omniscient type POV. I just thought that was kind of a funny tidbit, and that really, I feel like, kicked off, yeah, this makes sense that we have such a humorous narrator, and of course they exist in the story. It's not just like randomly we have a funny omniscient narrator. Again, we're gonna talk about romance in a little bit, so we're gonna yada 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 a little bit of the Charlie stuff, and we're gonna go straight to Tress trying to get on the boat, trying to go save Charlie. Tress's parents are very sweet and kind, and I love the efforts that they make to allow their girl to do what she needs to do. But also, can you guys believe this plot that they came up with to get Tress on the boat? I was reading the whole thing, and I was just, you see that a girl gets taken out of a barrel, and you're like, well, that sucks. But you're also a little bit like, there's got to be more to this plan, right? It's not just as easy as them putting her in a barrel. But in no world was I thinking she herself is the inspector that she is trying to get past. Like, huh? Again, just speaks to the high level of, like, wit to this book that it's like, hadn't considered that. Didn't think that was an option. How is it that the person that we were trying to get past, we can just say, well, they're not going to be here. We're going to pretend to be them instead. Like, what? It was so funny. Like, I'm still a little bit confused overall with how they pulled it off. Like, I understand that as far as, like, the other dock people, that Tress's dad had kind of ins with them. And so they basically aren't going to say anything about, well, that's Tress. That's not the inspector. That's Tress that's doing the job. I understand that part, but it just seemed a little bit too easy, I guess, in my mind, that it's like, we just all, like, how do we even alter the register so that way the inspector shows up late? I don't know. It was just like, it kind of almost seemed like, should that have worked? But again, nitpicking, who cares? It was hilarious, the fact that worked at all. At some point, I wrote down, never write hun in a book if you don't want me to hear Edna Turnblad in my head. I think that Huck said hun at some point. So that was just a funny tidbit that when they said hun, I'm like, hon, hon, I'm Edna Turnblad. This is a really bad impression. Can you all hear the same things that I hear? Again, talking about the spores, at some point they give a breakdown of how the spores can kill you. Like, the fact that you don't think about how it's like, yes, they react to water, but it's like, well, as we all know, humans are like 60-something% water, and that can come in many forms. Like, if it touches your eyeball, if it touches your nose, if it touches your ears, like, there are so many holes that we have that are a little wet inside. So if a spore were to touch it, it would explode, and I really did not need that description. Even at one point, I think Hoyd's like, you're welcome for giving you that detailed description, and I said, no thank you, take it back. I've already watched the first few episodes of The Last of Us, and I didn't need that the first time. I even played the video game of that, and I felt like the TV show made it way more realistic and scary, and I actually didn't finish the TV series because of that. But interesting note about Hoyd, he said that he needed something that the sorceress had, but getting it from her was more difficult than expected, which is how he ended up with the curse. I think I have notes related to this later of some funny kind of things that we find out more about why Hoyd was there. But I'm really interested in these Hoid Travails type stories to learn more about him, his motivations, and I took some notes of some things that I'm curious if they will come up more in this sort of like series, slash maybe they're Easter eggs to other book series that Brandon has written. And for other people, it's a fun, like, yeah, we all know about this thing. But for me, I'm like, hey guys, there might be a connection here. I actually should have said this from the very get-go. Like, I mean, I kind of said it in a way, but just to be more clear, everything I'm giving is from the perspective of someone who has not read anything else in Brandon Sanderson's repertoire. So if you guys know things that I don't, and I'm not calling it out, that's why. So speaking of kind of these connections, there was a foreshadowing for the future that I noted where the wizard Fort got his board from wasn't Hoid. Like, Hoid makes a point to say this, that he was not who gave Fort a board to communicate with, because Fort is deaf, and so he uses a board that like transcribes what other people are saying and also what he is saying for other people. And he says it's Nathian tech with awakened predictive connection circuits. And I don't know what that means, but I wrote it down because I said this might mean something to someone in this world or maybe in other books. So I just thought that was interesting. It's also, again, this is a bit of a call out where we at some point are asked, like, what is Hoid? And he's kind of like, you could say that I'm a sorcerer. And like, you know, it's still not given exactly like definitively, like, yes, I'm a sorcerer. And so here's another example where like a wizard is who gifted this board, and he's saying, but not me. So like he's something in this magical type person, but still unclear as to what. Makes me think that, you know, it's not exactly wizard, it's not exactly sorcerer. So there's something that we are not thinking of that I'm curious if it's something that already exists or if this is like a brand new term that exists in this world that we just don't know about yet. Maybe a mage? Maybe. I don't know what a mage is. Moving through a little bit more of this story and the notes that I took down. Ulam. I don't know exactly how you say his name. Just have to say, I mean, we could talk about all the characters in general, because they were all a delight. They were all so much fun to listen to and talk about. I thought Ulam was fun, obviously. Fort, Soleil, and I loved this little cast of characters that we had on this boat. And I love the journey that we get to see all of them take. But I do want to specifically call out Ulam because he was so funny. Like, without trying to be. There's so much wrong with this man. What is wrong with him? Why does he want everyone's body parts? Like, again, this was a little bit more of a situation where it's like the concept of this character is so crazy that of course I love him. He's a weird little zombie man who wants everyone's body parts for fun, and he's going to sew an ear onto his arm because he says that's going to help him hear better. I will say that at first I was kind of picturing like a Mad Hatter type person because so many of his sentences end with like, and that's how I hear it. It's like, like a little throaty. But he really starts to feel, as the book goes on, less cartoony. Like, he really does have some sincere moments, and it's not just so much that, like, he's a fun character. But then out of nowhere, he goes, and then you're like, okay, yes, he is a cartoon. Never mind. So just kind of a funny dichotomy that it's like, he could be real normal, and then he ends his sentences with, and you're kind of just taken back out of it, and you're like, right, you're a cartoon zombie. I am excited though that it sounds like Ulam comes back or could come back into other books based on Hoyt's description, because he says that like they've known each other for a long time and that like he was originally on a completely different planet and then he was the one to come after and find Hoyd and discovered his ailment, and he had just taken up residence on the ship because he was like, well, Hoyd's fucked and I'm just gonna hang out. Like, not even exactly like, it's so funny because it's not said that he's doing it to help him. He just more so, it seems, amused by the situation and said, well, I can't leave. I have to stick around for this. It sounds like they're friends and that they would seek each other out. So I'm assuming that in other books, Ulam is going to be there in a lot of them. Like, I don't necessarily expect anyone else from this Tress world to maybe reappear in other books, but I would think that if Hoyt is there, Ulam is probably going to make an appearance. I also have to say, I didn't grab I was reading on my Kobo, so I do have like some of the pictures that were in the book, because again, another thing, the art in this book was so cool, even though I'm kind of interested in going and buying a physical copy just to like have it to see more physically. But even on the Kobo, you could see the art and it was really cool. And I will have to say that at one point they showed Captain Crow and she's pretty hot. I don't know. I just am curious. Did anyone else think that Captain Crow was kind of going to be uggo? Like, she was giving just like mean lady who couldn't possibly be pretty because her soul is as ugly as her face is. But then they show her and I'm like, well, damn, she's hot. That sucks. That's just how I felt about that. That was a bit of a plot twist for me. Bigger than bigger than Huck being Charlie. Literally me writing on the page, wait. I was supposed to be picturing a hot person this whole time? Crazy. Anyway, another possible foreshadowing or reference thing that I wrote down. Tress says, "We don't know enough, Huck. We don't know why the captain wants to make the others into dead runners. I mean, she wants to order them to do something dangerous, but why?" And then Huck says, "Yeah, I'm baffled too. Reminds me of a friend of mine. He was a character, I tell you. Once he was offered cheese. By the way, we don't like cheese as much as people think. Wonder how the rumor started. Anyway, what did I think? What was I saying was a possible... Oh, I think him having a friend who was offered cheese and wanted to make people do dangerous things. I think that is what I was saying was a possible reference there. I think I wrote that down also for later for me to think about, like, okay, was this something that happened in this book or is it something outside of this book? So I'd be very curious if anyone else caught on to that and made a connection with where exactly that might have been going. Back to Ulam, I wrote another thing down. Someone said, in reference to him, "That stupid shapeshifter was enjoying this. I swear, they've all been getting weirder ever since Sazed released them." So that feels intentional. Is that from something? Guys, let me know. What is that from? I'm just so curious. So that means, okay, so they were saying how Ulam is a corpse, but he's also a shapeshifter. Like, that is pretty definitive that he is considered a shapeshifter. I need more information. Shouldn't we have seen him do some shapeshifting? Am I wrong? What is going on there? I would love to learn, A, more of the backstory there, and B, which books to read to get them. Maybe that's a better way to ask for, like, the information that might be connected to it. It's just like, is there information connected to it, and tell me where I can find it? Because, no spoilers. There's also a point where Hoyt says, "I'm not the person Tress was." And that makes me worry that at some point, Hoyt is telling the story and she is dead. So that's just an unfortunate and sad thing. I'm assuming, I mean, it could just be general past tense because all of this happened in the past. But does anyone think that Tress is dead? That would be really sad. She went through so much, but she is a pirate. So those are kind of dangerous journeys, you know? So when they get to the Midnight Sea, there's a point where, obviously at this point, Huck has already done some shady stuff. He's done the stuff where he had Hoyd overthrow, like, food and water and stuff like that. And then when it gets to the point where Huck insists on going on the journey with Tress into the Midnight Sea, and he, like, kind of commands the little Midnight Sea creatures and stuff, it says Huck the Rat had returned to the place where he'd been created as instructed by the sorceress. And in that moment, I was devastated. It's just like, how could someone who has been so good this whole time and, like, I mean, kind of has done some things, but, like, you can kind of see the intention behind it. Like, he's trying to get her away from doing this stuff, that it's like, no, how, why would this happen? And I was just devastated. And I'm really glad that in the end, there was specific reasons, but I was like, no, this could not be happening. This is a sweet baby story. You can't tell me that there is great betrayal happening. That's crazy. I wrote down a note that says Brandon Sanderson has a crazy vocabulary. Because I don't have my Kobo with me, I can't pull up what the exact words have been. But there were multiple times that I had to hold the word, see what the definition was, and was like, wow, Where did he get that? Does he know that word off the top of his head? Or did he, like, thesaurus the shit out of this stuff? Because stuff I've never heard of, but good for him. I thought it was hilarious that, we get to the sorceress's spaceship, question mark. I don't know if I have this included in my notes, but it, in my opinion, seems as though the sorceress is an alien, like low-key canon. But they get to her spaceship, they see her in there, and she is just kind of straight up brain rotting, looking at her screens and looking at her TV show programs, which are cameras for other people, but still, like, she's just like us, I think it's funny that in every world we got people brain rotting on screens. You can't escape it. I also thought it was really funny that her name is Rinna, and if you were a person who likes reality TV and exists in this world, in this current time, I then, as soon as they say that, I was like, Lisa Rinna? The Lisa Rinna is the sorceress in this story? And I said, well, that's her now. That's who I'm seeing. And it fits, too, that she's a traitor. So, it all lines up, in my opinion. I also have a theory. There's something that Hoyt says when he gets to the sorceress about, like, how she has glowing skin and how that was, like, what he came there for. And I assume it's something greater, like it's something more like the specific type of power that she has that causes that glowing skin is what he wanted. But I like the idea, or like the thought process, that like he just wanted a really good facial, the same kind that in theory the sorceress gets and has glowing skin. And that is how he ends up with a curse, and that is, here and there and everywhere. It's also mentioned that the sorceress has a map of the world on the floor. And I have in quotes, off-worlders called the place Lumar. Again, reference that I probably don't understand, that other people do. Let me know. I'm just kind of curious if these are like things that everyone reading this book, assuming that you've read other Brandon Sanderson stuff, understood from the get-go, or if this is more like foreshadowing, Easter egg reference type stuff for more of these Hoy specific stories, At one point, Hoyd mentions the wind in his hair, which kind of took me by surprise because I had never considered that he had hair. Personally, I was really picturing like a Tommy Pickles or like a Caillou type situation, like, or maybe Dopey. Like, he was just giving such village idiot vibes, and I was like, well, he can't have hair. Those things don't go together. You can't be acting like this and also have hair. Everyone knows that. The whole sorceress Rinna, yes, leaving the planet and Charlie's curse being kind of broken felt too easy, but whatever. Yes, I do agree with that. That might have been part of why I docked this rating for the book a little bit, because the ending just really like wrapped up. Like, it's kind of crazy that she basically is like, okay, I'll just leave. And then like, especially the way that Hoyt is just kind of able to finagle the remedy to the curse. It really felt too easy. Like, I don't know how I feel about that. So that kind of concludes my overall thoughts on the book, sans the romance. But now we're going to get into the romance portion of it. And boy, do I have a lot of thoughts. I have a whole big section of various times where I just had thoughts to say, but also like times I picked up on clues that Huck was Charlie and stuff like that. Because also, to talk about it further, can you guys believe that this whole time Huck was Charlie? When I got to that part, it was actually like 5 or 6 a.m. in the morning for me. I read my Kobo, even though it's towards the end of the book, and I know it could get really crazy, but I still continue on. And it gets to the end, and she says that Charlie is Huck, and I'm like, it is the craziest of plot twists that I wasn't even considering that anything like this could be happening in this book. There's so much, this book is so jovial and easy breezy peasy, and so I had no suspicions that someone was trying to pull the rug over my eyes, which I think really worked to the benefit of this book. It's like you really get lulled into this sense of like you understand for the most part what's going on, even if you don't. Like, it just feels like I don't know. It was crazy. I could not believe that. This was so unexpected for me. Personally, I did not see it coming. I would really love to know, though, if anyone else saw it coming, because looking back, there were some clues for sure. But I don't know. I just personally, I think there was enough of like other information to sort of throw the scent off that you wouldn't have known. So anyway, we're going to start back from the beginning to talk about everything between Tress and Charlie/Huck. From the get-go, again, like I said, I thought the romance was really sweet. Looking back through the book, chapter 2, where Charlie is introduced, ends with the cutest line. She didn't visit only because she wanted to hear his stories. In fact, on the deepest level, it wasn't about cups or stories at all. It was instead about gloves, which is such a cute thing because they have the whole thing about how they fit each other like gloves and they're just like so perfect for each other. And it's so sweet. It's so cute. I also thought it was so sweet that Charlie is making such a concerted effort to not get married. He's doing so much stuff. He's just talking about nonsense. He's talking about anything he wants to, just drolling on about it. He is even like, if the person's deaf, he's like, fine, I'll throw up in your lap. He has no qualms with doing this shit. And then on top of that, he's doing all that to avoid getting married. He's also making sure to buy a cup for Tress at every point and mailing it off to her so that she knows that he has successfully moved on to the next place. And this is where I say, ladies, if he wanted to, he would. This is that example. If he wanted to, he would. Charlie did. Charlie made sure not to get married to anyone else, and he bought a cup, her favorite thing to collect, a cup from each place, and sent it off to her. Never forgot until he was suddenly given to the sorceress and couldn't do anything else about it. That is crazy. That is a crazy standard to set in my mind, Brandon Sanderson, that it's like, this is what people are willing to do. And this is what you should expect, nothing less. It's so crazy too. So obviously, like I said, I looked back at a lot of stuff from the book and kind of reread parts. And so I reread the part where Huck and Tress first kind of meet each other on the boat. And it is so cute and sweet to reread that through Charlie's eyes because, you know, they're talking for a while to each other over the wall. And then he unplugs the cork and sees her, and he's clearly stunned. He like is staring at her, and after a while she's like, what? And like kind of annoyed. And he's just like, oh, I wasn't expecting someone so young. Like he kind of had to make up an excuse, but you can tell he's so taken aback, and it's like, girl, what are you doing here? But also like probably in his head, he's like, it's gotta be such a difficult thing because it's like, of course he probably misses her so much. And like, there's a part of him that's so excited to see her, but also knowing that it's like, shit, she's coming for me. She's trying to help me. And like, I just rather she be safe. You know, that's got to be so difficult. I wrote down a few different, these are like kind of a mix of thoughts, but this is where I start to get into territory of like, here were some times where we had clues that Huck was Charlie. There was a time that he said, I met a deaf human once. She was a dancer and one of the best under the moons. Best I'd seen anyway. I was enjoying the time with her, but it ended up getting interrupted in a rather abrupt way, which is a shame, but things happen. I also couldn't afford to talk to her since, you know, things relating to who and what I am, didn't want to reveal myself. And I remember that early on when they were talking about like the princesses he was meeting up with, that one of them was deaf. So I imagine that this might be who he was talking about, but also don't love that he was not totally opposed to spending time with her. So like, there's a part of me that's like, I feel like the likelihood is that this was a clue that this was Charlie because this is the deaf princess that he's talking about. But I also don't love that he's saying that I actually did like her. And it's like, no, Charlie, you were supposed to have eyes on one woman only. And maybe you mean this platonically, but I still don't care. I don't want you to say it because me and Tress are tight. And it was really after that point that I noticed a couple of different times that I was like, man, Huck really did ramble a lot. Like, it was kind of right in front of us in that regard. Like, if there was one clue that he gave to us, it was that we were told that Charlie rambles. And here it's happening again. But there was another point where Huck paused, his head cocked, as if searching for the right way to explain, and then says, I come from a place a lot like the one you came from. My kind has lived there for generations, but my kin, they thought it was time to go, see the world. They dragged me off for my own good. That didn't go well. They wouldn't much like me hanging around with you. I'm not supposed to talk to your kind, you see. So that's again another little clue. Like he's saying, I come from a place a lot like yours, but in reality it is like, I come from exactly where you come from. And again, a little nugget of information that they wouldn't like him talking to her because the Duke, the dad, did not approve of their reunion. Another clue, Hoyt at one point says, find a person who isn't a person. And I think later he amends it to be like, find something that talks that shouldn't talk or something like that. But the first time around, like, we are getting told straight up that Huck is not actually a rat. Like, he can talk because he's a person. He's a person that is not a person, but he is a person. There's another time where Huck tries to answer Tress's question, asking if he can guide her to the Sorceress' Island, but is unable to. He then says, no, I can't. I'm not what you think I am. I'm not a familiar. Well, I guess I kind of am, but not in the way you're thinking. My whole family can talk. I grew up on a lonely island far, far from the Sorceress's realm. And then he basically explains the whole, like, how you can get Hoy to explain his curse by having him not say anything about the curse, which is exactly what he is doing in that moment with Tress. Like, him explaining to Tress that, like, yeah, you can have someone kind of talk around the curse if, like, you get them to position it differently. Like, that is his own way of saying, like, hey, I have a curse, but I can't talk about it directly because X, Y, and Z thing. And again, like, even in that moment, when she asks, like, can you show me how to get to the Sorceress? It's like, that is in itself an example because he's like, I can't. And he's not saying he can't because he doesn't know how. He can't tell. He can't say those words to her. So a whole little trifecta of, like, exactly what we were talking about to begin with. I also forgot to mention, halfway through the book, I realized, oh my god, yeah, this part, I apologize in advance. So at a certain point during the book, I kind of realized that, like, Huck in my head has kind of this, like, raspy, kind of rascally tone to him. And I was like, this feels very specific, the voice that I'm kind of picturing in my head for Huck. Who does it sound like? And then I kind of realized halfway through that Huck's voice in my head was voiced by Chris Pratt. I'm just as upset as you are. Like, even in my thoughts, I can't escape him. How is it that he's cast as every single animated main character, including in my own head? I have free will, and I did this. And I don't think this is fair. I think this is an act of society pushing him onto me. I think this is Chris himself pushing himself onto me. I do think that once I find out that it's Charlie, it's like, okay, that changes some things. But can you believe? Why is that happening to me? Another clue, Huck tells Tress about the island he escaped to in a rambling fashion. And it brings Tress a lot of comfort because it's Charlie! So, in case you don't know the specifics on this, there's at one point where there's a small opportunity where Tress could have escaped the boat, not the first time around. This is after already becoming the Sprouter and all this sort of stuff. Like, this is where Crow's intentionally keeping her on the boat, knowing that she might want to actually escape this time. And so, during that time, Huck does actually leave the boat for a little bit and then comes back on. And so she's sad because she didn't get to escape like she had originally hoped that she could. So in order to comfort her, Huck tells her stories. So this is also kind of like a cute moment as well. And so he tells her stories about just simple things like the water fountain and the bell tower and all these, like, just things that no one else would normally care about. And she genuinely is comforted by it. And it's like, yeah, it's Charlie. It's so cute. I love that detail. So getting to the point where they get to the spaceship, the Sorceress is just like, yeah, here's Charlie. You won. Take him. Go ahead. And I just immediately thought that something was not right. I don't know if anyone else got this vibe, but, like, obviously he seemed grateful to see Tress, but I don't know. He just didn't seem like a real person. Like, he wasn't asking Tress, like, oh my god, how are you here? Are you okay? Blah, blah, like, kind of going into that realm. It was just immediately like, well, that was done. I can't wait to go home. Wouldn't it be great to go home, Tress? Sure, there's a chance that there is some truth to like Tress has grown too much and Charlie has not grown enough for like what they have both gone through. But this felt a little insane, you know? Like, we don't know that much about Charlie, but it's like, surely he can't be so vapid as to not like ask basic questions about her when they both went through so much shit. So that was giving red flags for sure, and I'm really glad that that ended up kind of pulling through. And very glad, and then obviously, again, dumbstruck. Absolutely dumbstruck when it was revealed that Chuck was Charlie. Like, just had never occurred to me that that could have been the case. So, to backtrack, I did keep a log of moments where, looking back, they might have kind of been romantic. Overall, again, they weren't really that romantic because he's a rat. But there was a point where when Tress started scrubbing the deck when she first gets on the boat, Huck was whispering encouragements in her ear, which I thought was really cute. He also waited outside the bathroom for her in a very, very gentlemanly fashion. And I think there's another point too when maybe she has to change or something, that he very quickly is like turns around and is just like, you know, like he just knows so gentlemanly what to do and is so sweet about it. He also offers to bite whoever upset her on the toes, even though it's the third most stinky part of the human body. I do it anyway, for you. Like, we're just so cute. Another one, when Tress tells Huck he should go back to his island and leave, Huck says, I can't ever go back to my island, Tress, because my home isn't there anymore. Because she's not there. Because she's his home. It's like, oh my god, it's so sweet in retrospect. It's not like, because at first you hear that and it's like, oh, his home was devastated. Like, there's nothing left or something like that. It's like, no, his home is Tress. Huck offers to get into the sorceress's tower just because she looks sad and it pained him. Like, I think at first he was not down for this plan. And then she was just like, and he was like, okay, for you. I was like, yes, good boy, good boy. And then Huck raises a paw toward Tress in a little fist to encourage her during her talk with the sorceress. Like, she's trying to convince her of something, convince the sorceress, and he's like, go on. It's just so funny to think of a little rat just being like, yes, my baby, keep fighting for the fake version of me that you're gonna take away. I did keep a running list of some of my favorite jokes because, to be honest, there were so many. It was hard to choose, but these were some of the a little bit more like one-liner, easier to log down. And I believe Hoyd says all of these. The first one, the locals worship those 12 moons as gods, which we can all agree is far more ridiculous than whatever it is you worship, which is incredible. Also, wait, guys, did you know that hold on, did you guys know that Brandon Sanderson is Mormon? He teaches at BYU. Isn't that crazy? Not that I'm saying it can't be true. I actually do have I say friend, like, at this point we're acquaintances, but like we went to school together, a friend who's Mormon, and it's kind of crazy in retrospect. Like, I didn't know anything about it when I was a kid, but now that I'm an adult, I'm like, oh. And so you kind of expect maybe a little bit of a different vibe from someone as a result of that. And so he kind of falls into that category of like, wow, he seems so like just not what I personally would expect. Just very chill, very cool guy. Couldn't believe that. Anyway, I just was curious if anyone else didn't know that. Another quote, he was 6.5 feet tall and had a jaw so straight it made other men question if they were. That's just an incredible line. Had a jaw so straight it made other men question if they were straight. Incredible. Now you might say to me, Hoyd, this entire story has shown me the opposite. Lem's family is always scrimping to survive. And I would reply, please stop interrupting. I loved that. There's another time that he says, yes, that's me. No, I don't want to talk about it, because he was doing something stupid and made no sense because of his poor curse. There's another time that I wrote down. It's called the transitive property of ineptitude and is the explanation for anything you've seen me do wrong ever. And that feels like me. I get that. Like, if I've ever done wrong, there's a reason for it. And in which case, that kind of means that I didn't do anything wrong because I'm just human. You know? It couldn't possibly be my fault. that is everything that I had to say about Tress of the Emerald Sea. Let me know. I asked for thoughts throughout this whole video, so I hope you remember them and can just leave it in the comments because I don't remember. Let me know if you thought Captain Crow was hot. I feel like there is no way you didn't think that because just look at her. Let me know if you didn't think she would be hot, but then she was. Isn't that crazy? Anyway, so thank you all for your patience with this book. This came out a little bit later than I had planned. At first, it was probably going to come out a little bit later just because of myself. And then actual bad things happened to me. And it said, well, that's for sure not happening now. So this is coming out a little bit late, but I appreciate you guys hanging tight. I do plan on in the future doing some things a little bit differently with the podcast as far as I think for the time being, I'm going to pause doing off-the-shelf episodes unless there is something specific that I want to do, just because it's kind of hard for me to think of off-the-shelf episodes for just me, myself, and I to talk through. I don't already have a lot of ideas to begin with, and those ones in particular feel a little bit harder for me to sustain an episode for. So, if there's this particular topic and something I want to do, it's not like it won't ever happen again, but I am going to probably stay focused more so on doing book club episodes because that's the bread and butter of what I enjoy talking about. With that being said, also, our next book club book that we're going to be talking about is going to be a mystery thriller, but especially thriller, called Kill for Me, Kill for You. And I should have looked up the author, because I never do that, by Steve Kavanaugh. And I got put onto this book by my sister and sister-in-law. And so because of that, they didn't officially say yes, but I'm pretty sure for the next episode, I'm going to have them on to talk about it. Because A, they put me onto the book, and B, I know that they still are kind of obsessed with it and would be willing to talk about it. So we're going to have some guests, y'all. I'm excited. So to give you guys a back-to-book summary about what this book is about, I got it here for you. One dark evening on New York City's Upper West Side, two strangers meet by chance. Over drinks, Amanda and Wendy realize they have much in common, especially loneliness and an intense desire for revenge against the men who destroyed their families. As they talk into the night, they come up with a perfect plan. If you kill for me, I'll kill for you. In another part of the city, Ruth is home alone when the beautiful brownstone she shares with her husband, Scott, is invaded. She's attacked by a man with piercing blue eyes who disappears into the night. Will she ever be able to feel safe again while the blue-eyed stranger is out there? That's it. I've already read this book. I'm going to listen through it again to see if I pick up on any Easter eggs. So that way, if anyone enjoys those sort of things like I do, you can learn more about that. Really recommend. This will come out at some point. The reason why I say at some point is most likely at a minimum 4 weeks from now, but maybe earlier. Because I did already read this book, it might be a little bit easier for me to kind of get this wrapped up. Oh, I was going to give a little reading recap of what I've been reading lately. So I've been listening to, and I'm literally almost done with Glorious Rivals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. And it was on my hopefuls list for 2026. And I just wanted to give an update that I don't really like it. I kind of would be curious if other people feel differently, but I don't know. I just don't know if I really like this series. Part of the problem was that I feel like I needed more of a bit of a backtrack of what happened in the last book. I feel like normally when you read a book that's part of a series, there is a bit of that harkening back to things that happened in previous books and re-explaining it. And normally I hate it because it's I already know. But in this case, I'm I would really love a refresher. And so you don't really get that. And I already didn't love the first book in this series, so yeah, the second book is not great in my opinion for that reason, that it's if you're not really invested in this story, it's not going to get more investing. It has ended on a cliffhanger. I do know that much. Unfortunately, that is kind of the most interesting that's come out of this book. And it sucks too because I know that Jennifer Lynn Barnes is really excited about the twist that's supposed to come into this ending book for this series, the third book that's going to come out, I think this year. But I don't know, man. I part of the problem could have been that I was listening, but I think I really needed a refresher of like what happened in the first book. And, you know, I do think it really speaks to it that I don't know if this book really stands on its own very well without reading the first. Like, obviously, there are some series where you're gonna need that background information, and especially something like this where it's like you technically need to read a complete other series to really fully understand the dynamics between a lot of these people. But I don't know, like, I don't think that this book really holds up on its own, in my opinion. So, not looking great for that. And then I also have been reading with my eyes Enchantra by Kaylee Smith, because I would hopefully like for that to be the next book club book after Kill For Me, Kill For You. TBD though. And I also am not, I like it okay, but there are definitely things I don't like about specifically Genevieve. We'll get to that though later. So yeah, that's everything that I got going on. Anyway, to continue with the outro, next episode will be about Kill For Me, Kill For You. And we will catch back up then on what all I've been reading and what all of you people think in general. Again, thank you for your patience with this episode. I really appreciate it. And thank you guys again for sticking around. It really means a lot to me that I have people that are friends that listen to this podcast still. Thanks for listening to the latest episode of our hit podcast, Read Receipts. All of the content that you hear in this podcast is curated, recorded, and edited by us truly, with special thanks to the authors of the books that we cover and Pixabay for the music that we play. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you like to listen. For more of our content in between shows, you can find us at the Read Receipts Pod on Instagram and TikTok. We read all your comments and love all your likes, so please, please, please follow along. And also, please, please, please leave more comments and likes because I would like it. Until our next read, bye!